You get tossed about when you're not steering the ship. You're just letting life blow you around. That's what it was. I was thinking about with the level up and the idea of that you're on a destination. Some of you are just getting blown to that destination by every wind of whatever the world is doing, instead of you driving the ship. Steer the ship, grab the rudder, grab the wheel. All right, so this is the Afterburn. This is when we take comments, questions you might have about today's teaching, and we're going to begin with Frederick.
Just a comment about the anxiety, and from my perspective of having dealt with it, I tried getting angry at it, trying to force it, and that only added that problem on top of the other one.
Well, I mean, it's not so much, whatever it looks like to fight harder, okay,
yes.
To overcome.
Okay, but there's at least from my mind, there's a problem of comprehension of what that looks like. So if I fight harder, I'm going to be like, and I end up more tense and more in pain.
Okay, but fight harder is going to be, first of all, counseling. Everybody's got any kind of mental health issues. You know what? Stop denying it. Stop beating that whole thing into avoidance. Go get help, okay? Proper help. Go find help, okay?
What?
Somebody, hold on.
I did get help, but what I found personally, that yes, I had weakness. And that weakness meant that my posture was a certain way that was not balanced. And that posture being that way, even though it felt normal to me,
right,
was actually a result of a imbalance and of a pair of muscles that meant that my posture was out of balance.
Okay.
Once I fixed those, or worked on fixing those, and addressed some other postural deviations, things got a whole lot more free and able to just do whatever I wanted to.
All right, and that's what worked for you. And
that's
again,
what worked for me.
And that's wonderful, because it makes kind of the point I want to make, which is kind of the idea of fighting is figuring out what the problem is with you. And making that effort, okay?
Yeah, so I had to figure out where my postural imbalances were and work on strengthening the muscular imbalances and straightening things out. And
no, I understand that, but that may not work for everybody, is what I'm saying. So, you know, most people with mental health issues aren't going to say, well, they need is a chiropractor and to balance their muscles. But what I'm saying is, the fight has to do with, am I stuck in the bed and I feel demotivated to do anything, I feel defeated? Then figure out how to fix that. Fight to get yourself out of the bed.
Yeah.
In other words, make the effort is what I mean by fight, right?
Okay, yeah, I was hearing, and because I was trying to,
listen, but I did mean that in the one case when I spoke to that gentleman, he was so defeated. I said, there's no fight in you. Yeah. Where's the fight? You're defeated. All right? I don't hear you struggling anymore against it. I hear you in the quit mode.
Yeah,
right?
And then there has to be a certain amount of try of poking. Does this work? Does that work? So yeah, you're right in that. But for me, it was figuring out how to let. Because once I fixed the postural things and let myself be in that, and yes, I had to fight against the habit of being the other way.
I understand. But you're not talking about generally what most of the people I'm talking to are. Yours was a physical thing that also was connected with a mental health thing. So that's a little bit different, okay? But it's similar enough that you made the effort to figure out what the problem was, okay? And that's the point, right? Rather than to be defeated, I mean, I think that's kind of what's the word? I was going to use like obscure or something else. I mean, I never would have come up that posture had to do with it, but it did. And that's great that you finally figured that out and that you made the effort to figure that out, okay? Now, part of it also has to do with some of your massage background, things that you understand about the musculoskeletal systems and what could be going on, which you have more of a background in than, say, some other people might. So that's someplace that we might go to when we have an experience in something to say, oh, well, I'm familiar with this. This may have something to do with it. But my main point is, I don't see the person putting the effort in. I call that the fight, okay? If you're broke and have been broke most of your life and tried a bunch of things, didn't work, are you gonna quit or are you gonna fight or struggle or make more effort to finally fix the problem, okay? A lot of people say, oh, I want to start my own business. Done that many times, failed many times. Everybody who's ever done business has started many times and failed many times, okay? The problem is most people can't get back up. Or at some point they quit if they really want to actually own a business or start a business, whatever. So do you have the ability to start again from that failure point? And it is a failure point. You failed. It didn't work. But you learn more out of the failures than you do out of successes anyway, okay? And so, one of the best things, for example, I just started doing a little bit of playing around with the stock market type stuff. And wouldn't you know it, the first week I was doing it, the first month I was doing it, it wasn't behaving so well. I learned so much by having to deal with the market not behaving well. More than I would have if the trades that I did just kind of went straight up. I would have learned nothing. I would have thought, I'm a genius, okay? All right? Look, I did this and it's going straight up. Well, guess what? It didn't go straight up. And I had to make all kinds of adjustments. I learned a ton from that, right? From adversity, you can learn so much, provided you don't quit and don't get defeated by it, all right?
When you were talking about the psycho-emotional stuff, right? And you got into that, it kind of brought forth like this idea, and I just want to run this past you, about like within this walk, right, we come into it, or if we came out of Christianity, and it's like, okay, this mental ascension where it's like, well, if you just say the right words or you believe a certain way, then you're there, okay? But then you come into this walk and you're like, well, there's things I have to do, which incorporates into like your physical life, right? And then it was kind of this idea that is, I can't remember where it says it, but in the scriptures it says that, that the Torah is spiritual, right? And so it's like, so it's kind of like this, it was this idea of we have that connection with the Creator in a spiritual sense, right? So like up here in the above, and then we have the below so that he gives us like this Torah that we can walk out. So we have both the meeting ends where we can have that connection with him. And that in between we have the psycho-emotional, the mental, especially like the emotional, and that it kind of like is like gradient in that way. And so that, because what I've begun to notice, like, as, I've been trying to push through all this stuff and try to figure out what's going on with me, right?
Right.
And it has to do with one of the first places is figuring out like how and why I have like any like emotional issues, I'd like to think, oh, okay, well, I don't like to think much of anything that might happen in my life or whatever, but things will happen, situations will happen, and then I've begun to, like you say, like observe how I react to that in an emotional way, and that, the work being how we like learn how to handle those things, and then as the work continues to happen, we're climbing up to where that connection between the spiritual and the above and us below, or, in our physical walk, because we continue to do it and we learn from it, it becomes more clear, right? So there's more of that connection that's growing, right?
Right.
Would you agree with that? Is that a good way to look at it?
Sure.
It really connected with me.
Just for those that are listening, though, when we use the words like spiritual, we're not using it like Christianity does. It simply means that it's of the above, okay? So the above, the heavenly, the spiritual, it's three different ways of describing the same thing. The below, the fleshly, the earthly is down below, right? So what he's saying is that the Torah, which is spiritual, meaning it comes from the above, it connects us to the above. It gives us an understanding of how to behave correctly according to the above, is that connecting point. So yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I appreciate the analogy of lion and weak ones. Would it be fair to say the herd is on the path and the weak ones are veering off the path?
They have stuff that puts them, let's say, at the edge of the pack, okay? So they're not right there in the center doing what they need to be doing. There's things that they're doing or not doing that have them sort of more straggling. So, I mean, yes, I agree with your analogy to some idea, but I don't want to say veering off, because the lion isn't always looking for the one that veers off. He's looking for the ones that are lagging behind a little bit, that show, even if they're in the middle a little bit, they see a little limp going on, a little something going on, and they're looking for an opportunity to isolate them a little bit. And usually is what the point is, that they isolate themselves, they make some bad choices, they get left behind. But yes, I think it also could be those veering off the path, yes. It's a fair analysis, but I think there's a little bit more to it than that. And Marlene, we miss you and hope that you get back here safe.
I was in a rush. You're going to have to help me sort this out. So the whole time during this teaching, I mean, I was back there just shaking my head and think, oh man, that's good. And especially when you spent the time on verse 8 out of chapter 5. And in 9, where we were talking about resist. And resist was I can think of many times when in the past, as you pointed out, we're talking about resisting the devil or resisting temptation. Feeling that's coming in our walk and it's causing us to drift off, and we're wanting this or that. And I can have many examples of saying, I'm off target, I'm off the path, and I would literally feel that amount of I'm going to resist this and fight this because I know this is
right.
It's me. Okay.
Right.
But so that's where my agreement was.
Right. But you're resisting something, not him, not this being, not this devil. You're resisting something that's tempted you or that has pulled you off to the side, but you're not resisting him. The idea of resisting the devil means resist these things that are not the truth, they're slander, they're wrong, they're whatever, this error that's pulling you aside that he's cheering on. But you're resisting something, okay?
Yes, and I would typically find my own weakness by doing that.
Well, let me give you an example because you kind of triggered something for me.
Okay.
All right? For a lot of you, you have a problem with reliving in the past. So when that starts to happen, you need to resist that, okay? You need to have a resistance to having the past keep leaking its way into your present, all right? Same thing with those of you that suffer, that's more of a depression problem. An anxiety problem is the future. All worries about, you need to just resist that and say, wait a minute, it hasn't happened yet. That might not happen, I know. But you have to resist allowing your brain to go forward or backward instead of being present, okay? Nothing wrong with using the future as saying, I wonder what things are possible for the future. And nothing wrong with using the past saying, I wonder what I can learn from that. But when you allow the negative stuff from the past to be now, when it doesn't need to be, you need to resist that. And it's also the fears of the future to be in the present when they may not even happen that way. And certainly you're still able to make a difference so that it doesn't happen that way. It takes a psycho-emotional resistance effort to not find yourself reliving or allowing the past or the future to screw with your present. Just to be blunt, okay? To mess with your present. All right, go ahead.
So then, just continuing from that, the comma, it's, like resist him, comma, firm in the belief. So then I started focusing on firm in the belief. And it came, then I started to say, well, the strength is in our belief. The strength is in what we know like has been mentioned, the Torah. It protects us, it gives us strength. And so it made me recall and go back to something that Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, when he made the comment in verse 9, my favor is sufficient for you, my power is perfected in weakness. And I thought, well, and Paul said, that's where I gain my strength, is in the weakness. And I think that would be, I'm assuming that would be the surrender, trust, obedience.
Yes. Okay, but remember, the connection here that Peter's making, though, is between things he said and then things he's now saying, right? So he's saying this idea of resist him firm in the belief. What belief? Well, the belief that there's a never-fading crown waiting, belief that humbling ourselves will bring favor from the Almighty, the belief that casting all our worry upon him, right, will make the difference. He listed a bunch of things that we need to be firm in the belief of. Like literally, not just firm in the belief generally, but things he literally just said. So a lot of it has to do with this idea of resist the devil, firm in the belief, meaning a lot of it comes from your worry. All right? He's saying a lot of this comes from a humility problem and a worry problem. All right, you're either too full of yourself and doing things your way and wanting whatever you want, or you're worried about things. Those are the two main things he's pointing out here.
That's right. You did bring bring that back to why was worry inserted in this?
Because these are the two things he's talking about up to verse 8, is a prideful problem and a fear-worry problem, okay? A humility problem and a fear-worry problem. He says, but you need to be firm in belief that if I fix these problems, there's a never-fading crown waiting, all right? Okay?
I can work with that.
Good. And he also says that he gives favor to the humble. Like, these are things that we have to believe are true.
So I watched a movie that I like a lot, and it hit me that, you know, how there's always a flaw in the system. And in the system, thinking of it like in this walk, you know, that it's going against us. And like what you mentioned, how, you know, the devil wants you to quit this walk. And since there's a flaw in the system, for me, it stood out to me hearing that in a movie that it's like Yahweh, you know how you said, Yahweh restricts, constrains, and limits what HaSatan can do. Like, that's that flaw to the system. Is that, like, okay in understanding that?
I'm not really sure what you're saying is the flaw in the system. It's people have always been told that he's unrestricted, unlimited, and you can do whatever he wants. And we're trying to explain that, no, that's just not the way it is. Because really the problem is mostly us, okay? And he's just a useful tool to help bring out some of that stuff that needs to be dealt with.
And then my second part was when you talked about, you know, you have to find yourself on the inside of you, like in the battle of your mind. Mm-hmm. And when you said, like, you have to fight the noise, like, that hit me. And it reminded me of myself before I got bubble popped. Like, I had to deal with all the inside noises in my head. It was mainly me being la, 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 la. But I had to fight that. And once the Father opened my eyes, I was able to have a sound mind. And that just really, when you said that, it felt like I just got hit by an arrow. And I was like, this is great.
Well, good.
I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And look, and Frederick, when we were talking about fighting before, the idea of, again, the noise might need a firm hand of saying, no. And that's maybe resisting more than fighting. So it's not that, but it's just more like, no, I'm not going there. No, that noise needs to just calm down. No, the past needs to stay in the past. The future needs to stay in whatever it is, having the strength of firmness, okay, to stand against something, all right? That's what I kind of mean more by fight as opposed to, getting right in there like that.
Like I said earlier, I had to give Yahweh permission to heal me and show me things because I want to connect with him. People describe him and their relation with him in such this beautiful way to me that it seems like the Twilight Zone almost. So I asked him to show me all the ways that I could embrace him, connect with him. Because when I read his word, I see that anything that's not of him is an abomination to him. So we have this internal structure. And you said to get curious about yourself, to see why you are the way you are. So that's what I'm searching on and ask him for him. So this morning when I'm getting ready, he was showing me about my son, but also about me, as I was asking him how I could get closer to him, embrace him, connect with him. And he showed me that my stepfather was very cruel, and I never had a childhood. I was more like Cinderella. And so when he, if he thought I was impatient, or he would tell me I was impatient or clumsy, so I needed to go take ballet, all the things that should have been happy as a childhood, he made it like a punishment to me.
Right.
And so that's how it's hard to connect to Yahweh when you see him as cruel or mean or unloving or narcissistic or whatever, So those are the things that I search for and that he's showing me, that everything was a punishment to me. So it took the joy and the innocence of being a child. And so that really helped me a lot to see things like that. And that's, there's a lot of people who have a hard time connecting to him. We come in the walk, we go through the motions, but it needs to be real. And we need to not walk according to emotions, but he has to be real to us. And that's what I was searching for. And I think that's what it has to be if you're going to transform into him.
Thank you for sharing that, yes.
From Rachel Espino, it's a two-parter. Rabbi, I want to make sure I understand strongholds. Our strongholds are what we have our grip on, and if we don't let go, then they have hold of us. Strongholds can be as simple as an idea of how things should be or how we expect them. So hanging on to these things can actually end up controlling us in a way?
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better.
Follow-up from Marlene is a two-parter. I appreciate the clarification that the weak ones are limping along and then start to isolate themselves. The enemy is dividing and conquering also, correct?
Yes.
If we notice mishpachah limping and isolating themselves, should we voice our concern to them?
You can. I don't know how effective that would be, but you can. Look, let me kind of throw this out there, right? I think a lot of the times the people that isolate themselves, people that leave, more often than not, and maybe Elder Rabbi Tom will tell me differently, but I'm pretty confident that most of them, it's because something came up that they wouldn't own, okay? Not all the time. And so going out and voicing your concern may or may not help if it's one of those kind of situations, okay? But we've had some people that have left, many of them, not everybody, over, not owning something, okay? And that does happen quite a bit, all right? And now there's lots of other reasons. People just decide to go on different journeys, different walks and that kind of thing, and that happens too, okay? But as far as the isolating, see, people that are going on different journeys aren't isolating themselves, they're just going on a different journey. They've made a decision, hey, I want to do something different, I'm going in this other direction. But I think a lot of the ones that isolate themselves is because they got hurt feelings over something that they're not doing anything to. They're unresolved feelings issues, okay? So I think that's been a big part of that. Would you agree, Elder, that would be, yeah, okay? So, that's a lot of when you see people limping and isolating is because they have unresolved feelings issues. Often, okay? Not always, but often. All right, next.
All right, from Kenneth Adkins, actually it's Laura. Please refresh for me any hints to make sure we're handling our emotions and not burying them.
If you're handling it, then whatever it is either doesn't come up anymore, or when it does, it also gets handled very quickly and without a whole lot of issue. It's if you find yourself back in that same negative space of whatever that emotion is, that you probably buried it as opposed to actually handling it, all right? Because something is actually handled, okay? Now, there's different levels of handling. I can handle it when it just happened. That doesn't mean I fixed it and resolved the problem, but I handled it. Now, the better I get at handling it, the more it gets closer to being resolved and not being a problem anymore. Burying it means that it's not getting any better. Okay, burying it, if it's something I hadn't really buried before, but now I'm burying it, might actually, when it finally comes back up, be worse because it's been buried, and now when it pops up, it's gonna be worse, okay? So let's understand this idea of handling doesn't yet, let's differentiate that from resolved, like it's something that's no longer a problem, okay? So I can learn to start to be better at handling some adverse thing where I improve on how I respond to the point eventually where it no longer is causing the negative response at all, okay? At that point, it's been resolved, meaning if it pops up, I'm now handling it in a different way. It's not triggering all the negative stuff. It's been resolved, okay? Does that make any sense to everybody? So in other words, like when I use the alcohol thing, it's not that nobody ever offers me to drink. Okay, but it's just not an issue, right? Okay, so at some point, I'll have a password not work, and I'll be like, all right, so the password doesn't work. Let's reset it, put a new one, whatever, and not get upset about it, right? So I'm getting better sometimes at that, okay? And so then you learn to handle it. And then when you handle it well enough, consistently enough, it becomes a non-issue. Okay, because now you have the right skill set, tool set, and response set, so you respond to it in a better way, so it's not actually a problem. All right, next.
All right, from Olivia, in verse 7, Yah being concerned about you is a very personal statement. Christianity made me think I had to pray about everything to walk with him. When I hear concerned, what should I be thinking?
All right, so in verse 7, casting all your worry upon him, for he is concerned about you. The way it's being worded here, so you're going to cast your worry upon him because, look, if I'm concerned for you, and you're worried about something and you give me that, you know because I'm concerned for you, I'm going to be aware of it, and I will give whatever help, guidance, or inspiration that might come from me because I'm concerned for you. Also, being concerned in this case, because we're talking about the Almighty, he doesn't allow things to come upon you that it's above your ability to handle it, all right? It's beyond your capacities. And nothing has ever been given to you that you can't make it through if you would just believe that, all right? It may look like and feel like it's over your head, but he allowed it because it's not, okay? So hopefully that kind of answers the question. So when you hear that he's concerned about you, think of it more like he's aware of what you're going through. And he cares about you in that awareness, all right? Next.
So from Anonymous Mom, so Jeannie, from Al, what if you don't see something not working out as failure, but rather giving up as failure?
Yeah, that's beautiful, all right? Things don't work on a regular basis. So don't be worried about failure. If you take the Level Up class, there's a point where I'm writing on the board, S and F over and over again. Success, fail, fail, success. That's like the whole cycle that leads you eventually to where you're trying to get to, all right? So that's life. We do well, for a little while, then fail a few times, and we succeed a few times and fail a few times. And, sometimes we'll have a couple in a row of one or the other, okay? But failure simply means what you were doing didn't work. It doesn't mean that you should give up, okay? It means what you were doing didn't work. And some of us need to be a little quicker to recognize that, okay? But you know what? To other people watching from the outside, they can get the wrong impression. I'll give you an example. Use me as an example, all right? So when I got married, I had a career that I was doing when I got married that sort of it stopped working as well as I had wanted it to work, all right? And so I changed careers. And then it happened 3 or 4 or 5 times in a row. My wife, looking from the outside, who didn't know me that well, we only knew each other a little while before we got married, started to think maybe that I had too much quit in me, and just anytime something got tough, I would just quit. She didn't understand that I was being quick to recognize that something was not going to get me where I wanted to go. Why keep putting effort into it? All right? Some of you need to develop this skill, because some of you have spent way too long doing something that's never going to get you where you want to go. And then you get frustrated years and years later, like, why am I where I am? Well, because you never thought to change the path that led you to where you are, okay? But later, as I got to explain this to her, I said, look, our goal was to make this kind of money and have this kind of life. And once I realized this particular choice of job wasn't going to get us there ever, I then sought to jump onto a different path that may have a better opportunity to get us there, all right? And see, that's a very important skill set that you guys need to develop a little bit more. Don't be over in a rush. I remember I'm doing this already by the time I'm in my mid to late 30s, okay, going into my 40s. I wasn't like a kid who was just quitting because the going got a little tough. You need to know, this is really important, I guess. What is it you're trying to accomplish with what you do? Why are you doing it? Whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whether it's whatever. Why? What is the point? Okay? Well, I need the job to pay my bills. Okay, so get the job to pay your bills. But what else do you want a job to do? Well, I want it to give me this kind of a life later. Is this job going to do that? No. Well, then let's not stay there very long while you're figuring out the job that does get you there. In other words, I don't have a problem with you getting a pay the bills job. Matter of fact, I've talked to a lot of people who are unemployed and have been for a while saying, go get the pay the bills job. While you have the pay the bills job, start looking for something that actually will take you further along the way, okay? But you should always be asking the question is, what is the end that I'm going to? What's the result I'm looking for out of this effort I'm putting in, okay? And so when I would be in a job, okay, look, I was a commodities broker. I was doing great. I was making $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month in commissions. And then the weather patterns got all weird and the commodities markets got all weird. And all of a sudden now I'm making like $2,500 a month. Well, that was a big drastic change in my income. And I realized that's probably not the way I want to keep doing things. It wasn't going to get me consistently to where I wanted to go, so I changed. But then I realized that wasn't, you know what? Be quick enough put in the effort, make sure that you've figured out what the maximum the thing can actually produce. And then if it's not going to get you where you want to go, make a plan to go to the next one, okay? I often use this idea, and I'm not picking on factory workers, but like if you're 20 years old working in a factory, making 20-something an hour, making 20 an hour, that's not bad, okay? But is that going to work when you're married and got kids and you're 40? Probably not, okay? So then think ahead in what you're doing. Is it going to get you to where you're trying to go? If it will, then that's great. If it won't, then you're going to have to plan to move. Change the path, the financial path, whatever the thing is. Maybe your health path. You've been eating a certain way. I mean, I was, in great shape as a teenager, but I ate almost anything like a lot of us did when we were teenagers, and it didn't affect me until all of a sudden it did affect me. So I had to change. Didn't want to make the change. I liked eating pizza every day. And I'm not exaggerating. It's probably what I did for a long time, was eat pizza every day. Not the healthiest choice. So that's what I want you to understand. So if you don't see something, if what you don't see, something, okay, is not working out, so don't see it as a failure, he said. Rather, the giving up is a failure. Yes, okay? I didn't give up on working. I decided to shift, okay? And by the way, I was doing sales. I stayed in sales. I still thought sales could get me where I wanted to go. I just changed the particular thing I was selling, all right? And so, now if I had realized I didn't want to do sales, maybe I want to do something in a different field, then I would have retooled for that. Wow, that sounds like a lot of work. Yeah, it is. Okay, but which is harder, retooling or ending up where the path you're on is going to have you end up and then you're stuck and you're not where you wanted to be? Look, I said this a lot in the Level Up class, okay? You guys have to really fully embrace and examine all those aspects of your life as to where those things that you're doing right now are already taking you. You are already headed to a health, wealth, relationship, mental health, whatever, community destination. How you act in all of those areas is already taking you to a destination. And then you get there and you're all upset and thinking life's not fair because you ended up in this destination you didn't want to end up in. But you did want to end up there because you didn't make the effort not to end up there. And you chose to turn a blind eye and not look and see where you were going. All right? And so that's, I say this as a sort of as an example. We're here in Tennessee. Think of that as being on the east coast of the states, and I want to go to California on the west coast, and so I get in a vehicle that takes me straight south. And then all of a sudden I realize I'm not anywhere near California. I'm in a whole nother country. I didn't go anywhere in the right direction. Why didn't you notice that earlier? Why did you wait until you landed in South America somewhere? Now you noticed, now you're in the wrong direction? We should be assessing all the time, is what I'm doing in my relationships getting me the relationship I want? Is what I'm doing in my finances getting me the finances I want? Or lifestyle? Is what I'm doing with my health getting me the health that I want? Okay? The level of community interaction, is that happening? The mental health and emotional health, is that happening? What are you doing or not doing? Are you recognizing where that's already taking you? Because it already is taking you somewhere. You are already on a trajectory, okay? So let's say you're 40, you should know exactly where you're going to be in all of those 7 areas at 50 and 60 if you don't change anything. And that should motivate you in some of those areas that you don't like where that's taking you. Some of them you might be very happy. Some of them you might not. How about assessing where you're already going? Okay? We're headed to the kingdom. We know that's where we want to go. Is what we're doing taking us there? Are the choices you're making taking you there? You pick a destination. I'm promising you right now, if you're 40 or younger, you need to be thinking about 60 and 65 now. Because what you're doing now will set the trajectory to having the life you want then. Okay? Because fixing it then is like brutal, if it's even possible. Okay? Given your skill sets and everything else, it may just be not possible if you wait that long. Same thing with your relationships. There's things you can do to fix it and make it better. Why would you wait while it just spirals and gets worse? Fix it now. Do the things to change now. But you're going to do that based on recognizing this is where this is headed. If I don't change something, that's where I'm going. That's where the relationship's going. That's where my health is going, my wealth is going, my mental health is going, my community interaction is going. That's where all these things are headed. Reality check, okay? You are already headed somewhere, all right, in all of those areas. All right, next.
All right, another one from Olivia. The word defeated does not imply quitting in my head. I feel defeated when my body is saying I can't do much more and I have to leave service. I think I'm defeated, but I know I won't quit. Is it just a personal thing, how we have experience and relate to a word that gives it its meaning? But I know that what quit means and I won't. This is so good. Thank you for encouraging us to take what's in our heads.
Okay, listen. Olivia, all right? It's not that problem. The problem is the measuring stick you're using. Okay, you're choosing to feel defeated because you'd like to be able to stay here for the entire service, but you're not physically capable of that at the moment. Although we were very happy to see you earlier. I gave you a hug when I saw you, and I got to see you during hug time and stuff and whatever. So it's great that you were able to be here for the time that you were. Don't feel defeated. Feel victorious. You were able to be here for the time that you were. That's fantastic. And you're still watching, and you're still typing in, and you're still able to be interacting with us. Okay, if you're doing, let's use this as, I guess, a way to say it. If you're doing the most you can do at any given moment in a particular area, why would you feel anything but victorious? You're doing the most you can do. See, the only reason you feel defeated is because you feel that you should be able to do more, instead of accepting that you can't. You physically at the moment can't sit through a 4-hour service. None of us judges you for that. We're all excited to see you as much as we get to see you. We recognize that you have the issues that you have physically. So why feel defeated? You're maximizing what you can, all right? And I think you've made a wise choice that you stay here early to meet everybody and to hear the music and the praise and to get all of that live. And then you realize you can listen to me from a distance, and it's not like you're losing as much getting this interaction on the screen as you are with the praise. So I think you're making wise choices there. You should be proud of yourself. You're doing the most you can. Sometimes you stay a little longer, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't even make it here. But that's in your reality. You're living within that reality. Don't feel defeated. Okay? Now, you might feel like you're not pushing hard enough in some areas at some times. I'm not saying in this particular case. That may be a motivator to do more, but why would you feel defeated? You do the best you can. The whole question is, did you do the best you can? Everybody, make sure that you are self-evaluating. Are you doing what you can to the best that you can? That's the parable of the talents. Are you doing the most with what you have, the best you can? Okay? Some of us are more physically capable than others. Some of us are less physically capable than others. What are you doing with it, though? Okay? I'm not expecting you in a wheelchair to be dancing with the dancers. But I can expect you to smile and sing and praise along if you're here or even if you're at home. That's something you can do, right? I'm expecting you to do what you can. You should be expecting you to do what you can. Don't be expecting you to do what you can't. And don't judge yourself and be hard on yourself because you can't. So you feel defeated because you want more, which is disappointment. Disappointment's fine. Don't feel defeated. If I were you, I would feel disappointed that I can't stay. I get that because you'd like to stay. When you can't have what you like, it's disappointing at times. All right, so good. I think it's okay to have that small negative emotion of I'm disappointed, I'm a little sad that I couldn't stay. But don't feel defeated. The key is that you couldn't stay. Okay, you can't make it through the service. That's nothing that's your fault. It's just what it is, right? So let's not do that. All right, so I appreciate the comment, though, and I'm glad that you found this encouraging. And again, I was very happy to see you and Barry when you were here earlier, okay? All right, is there another one?
Got one from Greg. It says, what does that look like? He's talking about verse 7, casting your worries on him. How do you cast?
Well, it's, in other words, it's not so much casting. It's that you're placing the burden on him. In other words, why am I worried? It's as simple as emunah. I trust that he's in charge, that he's causing and allowing, so there's nothing really to worry about. All right, that he is sovereign. So don't think of it as casting. It's placing the burden of responsibility properly on on where it belongs. I don't need to worry because he gave me this life. He has a plan that he's laid out where I can, if I do what I'm supposed to do, that plan leads me into the kingdom. Not a plan like every day what I'm supposed to be doing, but a plan that if I live my life and make the effort, the kingdom is at the end of that path. And I'm not worried about all the things in between. Why? Because I trust him. That's the idea of casting, okay? That's the idea of casting. So when we're talking about being firm, okay, and this is also talking about leadership here in 1 Peter, isn't that kind of the point of the fivefold ministry in Ephesians, where it talks about so that you're not tossed about, okay? It talks about teachings tossing you about, but really, if you're firm, you're not tossed about, okay? All right, so in other words, I was thinking of this when I was talking about how I changed careers a couple of times, or jobs at least a couple of times. I wasn't tossed about, I made choices. I'm steering the ship, okay? You get tossed about when you're not steering the ship. You're just letting life blow you around. That's what it was. I was thinking about with the level up and the idea of that you're on a destination. Some of you are just getting blown to that destination by every wind of whatever the world is doing instead of you driving the ship. Steer the ship, grab the rudder, grab the wheel. And make use of the counsel that's available, like in the fivefold ministry that it talks in Ephesians, says these guys are there so that you're not just tossed about, okay? Because you can have guidance in how to steer your ship. You still have to steer it, though. You still have to drive. You still have to have your hand on the rudder. You have to, spin the wheel, however you need to steer it. But you've got to take care. But a lot of you are like, I don't know how I got here. I'm 70 years old and blah, blah. I'm 50 years old and blah. You don't have any idea how you ended up there because you didn't take charge of your life. I'm not picking on you. That's like 90-something% of the world doesn't take charge of their lives, okay? Most people are not actually sovereignly in charge of their lives, okay? They're not owning their choices and deciding where they want to go. Most people think, well, I live in this place and I this and this and this, and so I can't do those things. That's nonsense. You can do whatever you want to do. It may take a lot, it may stretch you incredibly to do it, but you can. Stop. That's the defeated thing again. Stop saying, well, I can't. Okay? I was listening to somebody, I don't know if it might have been Matthew McConaughey or somebody doing some motivational thing, talking with Tony Robbins and those guys. And he said, listen, you couldn't say those words in his house. His father would smack you hard. You couldn't say the words, I can't. Okay? Was it Matthew McConaughey? Right, okay? All right? But I like that idea. I wouldn't allow that in my house either. I don't want to hear I can't. Especially if you hadn't really tried. Well, I tried once, it didn't work. Tried once. Okay, that's not trying. Tried once. Okay? Like I said, I didn't change jobs till I gave it every full effort, saw the full result, doing things to the maximum of where it was going to take me. All right? And then once I realized it was not going to get me where I wanted to go, I started looking for the next thing. All right? But that's same thing with health. I've been trying to get in shape. You can see I've lost some weight and everything else. Part of it is I tried this, it didn't work. I tried that, it didn't work. I tried lots of things that didn't work. Some of you have seen me look skinnier and look fat again, look skinnier. I've tried things that didn't work. All right? So did I quit when it didn't work? No, tried something else. Okay? One of the main things I tried was paying better attention to me, learning me, what works for me. Okay, my career path might have worked for some people. It wasn't going to take me where I wanted to go. My path, my choice, it wasn't taking me where I wanted to go. Whatever you're doing, as long as it's taking you where you want to go, keep doing it. Okay, you don't need to be the $100 an hour plus whatever person. If you can live nice enough on your whatever you're making and your lifestyle, then don't feel defeated, don't feel underachieving, don't feel anything. The whole point is, did you create the life you wanted? Make the effort to know that you get to create. You are like the creator. He gave you creative skills to create your life. What effort are you making to create the life you want? Are you making that effort to create that life?
From LE 124, waves of grief and pain will toss us around, and we should spend our time on shore determining how to navigate the next inevitable waves in a way that keeps us from drowning.
Sure. If you're suffering from, all of us suffer from waves of grief and pain from time to time, but if you're suffering from them on a regular basis, then it's important that you start to find ways to negotiate handling them so that knowing that they're coming on a regular basis, you've got a strategy, a plan, a process to handle that so that you can deal with the waves that are inevitably coming, all right? So in other words, there's times in your life maybe where there's a long while between big pain and grief. But for some people, they're at a point in their life where they've got pain on a regular basis and grief on a regular basis. Then yes, I think that you might not get in that much time on shore. You still got to figure out a way to negotiate the fact that this is coming in the kind of waves that it's coming. Because some people experience these things on a fairly steady basis, predictable basis. Other people, it comes in a very unpredictable way. Some of us go from one to the other. It starts off, unpredictable, and then as we get older, some things become more steady and predictable. Still, you have to come up with a strategy to handle it with your psycho-emotional makeup. You have to handle this stuff. Find ways so that it doesn't drown you, okay? And that you don't get end up wallowing in it and stuck in it, all right? You've got to find some way out of it.